I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people on whose land we are meeting today. I would like to give our commitment to follow their cultural protocols. And I would also particularly like to acknowledge the Indigenous women, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri women here in this local area who I know have been very committed over the years to prevent and reduce domestic and family violence here in our local communities. So today we are going to be hearing from Subrata, who is at that very exciting stage of his PhD journey. It's his final seminar and he will be submitting his thesis in December. So thank you very much for coming along to hear him give this presentation. And I thank the people who are also joining us online. Subrata is going to be presenting for about 40 minutes and he has asked if you could save any questions or comments until the end. And I'd ask or encourage people online to put your questions or comments into the chat and we'll get to those after Subrata has finished. Now, I first met Subrata, gosh, a long time ago now, 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have to, I've just got to acknowledge how difficult it must be to be a PhD student starting here, coming from Bangladesh. There's not a huge Bangladeshi community in Canberra. And I know Subrata has been one of those kind of people that has endeavoured at every opportunity to meet people, to get to know people, to try and better understand, in particular, the cultural mores, shall we say, of the places here, but also in Papua New Guinea, where he has visited as part of his fieldwork. And I'm sure he'll be paying tribute to his colleagues, some of whom are in the room now, who have helped him through that journey. I'd also like to acknowledge his wife, Sudeshna, who joined him here in Canberra. Hello, Sudeshna, I know you're there online. And as part of the PhD journey, they've had a child together, Sam, which is wonderful. So that's a very important outcome of this PhD process. So I won't say anything more other than to say Subrata came to us already with quite a strong background in criminology. As the bio description showed, he had already done a master's degree in Canada in criminology, and he'd also done degrees in Bangladesh and taught at the university there. Hand over to you.
Thank you, Judy, for your nice introduction. Welcome to my presentation. It's my pre-submission seminar, and my topics is the role of service providers to help women access to justice for domestic violence cases in Bangladesh and PNG. I begin this seminar by acknowledging the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, traditional custodians of the land. I pay my respects to their elder past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to any First Nations and Indigenous peoples joining us online or in person today. This is the outline of my presentation. So I have divided into different parts which I'm going to talk now. This is my wonderful supervisory team. I want to extend my gratitude to all of them for encouraging and supporting and inspiring me throughout the journey, and still they are doing so. This is my chapter outline. So I have a total 8 chapters in my thesis. So this is a slide I made to make you understand how the situation is going in both countries for gender-based violence issues. In the latest World Health Organization's report, Papua New Guinea has been included as number 3 and Bangladesh in the number 5 in the top 5 countries for domestic violence cases throughout the world. And if you see the statistics, even in Bangladesh, in their latest Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics survey in 2024, 7 in 10 women have experienced domestic violence. half of ever married women experience physical violence. Only 15% of survivors, they went for the medical treatment, and 2/3 of the survivors had never told anyone on seek assistance. In PNG, they have also a high rate of domestic violence. For example, they have 30%, 63% of ever married women who have experienced spousal violence. 66% women are the survivors of domestic violence. Then I will begin my story, how I was motivated to start this thesis. My motivation to start this PhD started when I was in Bangladesh. My identity as a South Asian male who grew up in a society where I regularly witnessed violence against women in my daily life. Domestic violence against women was regarded as a part of the culture, and patriarchy was seen as the norm in society. It was widely accepted that a real man always controls his wife and has the right to abuse her when he thinks it is appropriate. Until my teenage years, back in 2005, there are no effective legal instruments except the Dowry Prevention Act 1980, where women can seek for help and they can report their abuse. However, over the past few decades, things have gradually begun to change and improve. Laws to prevent domestic violence have been enacted. Women victims can file complaints in specialized courts. They can share their stories to the police stations with female police officers. And advocacy efforts have reached in rural areas, allowing women to find some solutions even in the village courts. My motivation to start this thesis has been there since then. I acknowledge that this is a sensitive topic to research on, especially for a male. To overcome this challenge, I have been interrogating my position as a male researcher and reflecting on my previous research experience and knowledge of working against gender-based violence. For example, I have been working in Bangladesh for more than 10 years on gender-based violence cases, and I have practical experience on collecting extensive data from field, which involve victims of sexual violence and victims of women trafficking. While the focus of the study is in Bangladesh, and this is not a comparative study, I also examine Papua New Guinea in the Southeast West Pacific as a case on a limited basis. The aim is to understand how a pluralistic justice environment similar to that in Bangladesh assists women in accessing justice services for domestic violence. It has provided me an opportunity to interrogate my interpretation of what I observed and learned in Bangladesh. Besides, my doctoral studies at ANU's Department of Pacific Affairs, with a strong focus on area studies of the Southwest Pacific, including PNG, have also motivated me to carry out this research in PNG. Additionally, my course work on fieldwork in the Pacific, along with my interaction with my Pacific peers, has also encouraged me to conduct this project. One of the most questions I have been asked throughout my PhD journey, since when I was presenting my TPR, my seminar interaction with others, why Bangladesh and PNG? The justification of choosing these two different countries in Asia and Pacific lies in terms of their similarities, the rate of gender-based violence, their colonial histories, a pluralistic justice sector, socio-cultural and religious norm shaping, responses to domestic violence, recent reforms in the justice sectors, and challenges of accessing justice services in both countries. For example, as I mentioned in my first slide, the rate of domestic violence is very high in both countries, these two countries. Both two countries have gone through the colonial story. For example, Bangladesh before 1947, when we got separated from India, we had 200 years of colonial British rule. And after 1971, the country got liberated. Most of the legal instruments, for example, and also the institutions have been enacted during that period, and they are still in effect. For example, the main criminal codes, for example, the Penal Code, the Code of the Criminal Procedure, the Evidence Act, the Police Act of Bangladesh, all are enacted during the British period, and all of them are still in effect with some minor amendments. Similar things happened in PNG since gaining independence in 1975. PNG government has undergone several reforms in both criminal and civil laws and has introduced specialized service for women who are victims of violence in the criminal justice sector. Following their first experience with European colonization, the people of Papua New Guinea has 4 colonial rulers in less than a century. Then legal pluralism is a reality in both in Bangladesh, with a variety of justice institutions visible in rural and urban regions. By legal pluralism, I mean that the coexistence of multiple legal systems within the society, where various sources of rules and obligations exist beyond formal government institutions. For example, both the countries have the formal courts, personal law system, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, village courts, informal community resolution system, and they shape and affect women's access to justice in varying degrees. In terms of cultural and social practice, Papua New Guinea is one of the culturally and linguistically diverse countries in the world, more than 1,000 tribes and more than 800 languages. The majority of the population lives in rural and remote areas, and more than 15% living in the urban setting. Similarly, in Bangladesh, it is not as diversified as PNG, but more than 60% population live in the rural area in Bangladesh, and the country has a huge population with more than 160 million people. Moreover, the conservative social and patriarchal values in both countries are deeply rooted in religious beliefs. For example, Islam in Bangladesh and Christianity in PNG. Although reforms have been made to improve women's access to justice for domestic violence cases in both countries have enacted several national and legal obligations have intersecting formal and informal justice sectors. For example, Bangladesh have now a specialized court, a specialized unit in the police. They have the victim support services who provide specialized services for the victims of gender-based violence. PNG have their first family and sexual violence unit in 2009. They also have domestic and family violence protection orders and family protection orders, and they have also the specialized service similar like Bangladesh, the family and support center. They have safe houses, and they have a number of human rights organizations that deal with gender-based violence. And I see that despite these reforms, women face multiple challenges in seeking justice when dealing the offense of domestic violence in both countries. These challenges include fear of filing complaints, negligence and harassment in the police stations, victim blaming, complexities of the criminal justice services. And there are still numerous claims that while service providers are supposed to deliver their service to women, they cannot do so due to several challenges, and women are still finding it challenging to access those services. I see these things as a problem. This problem, this context and background has influenced me to ask the following research question in my thesis. My first question is, how are the service providers' perspectives and how they help women access to justice? My second question is, how are recent legal and policy reforms impacting service provision and practices? My third one is, how do multiple intersectional factors such as gender, class, residence, culture, geography, and religion affect the service provisions and women's access to justice in both countries? To explore the answer of the research questions, the thesis develops a conceptual framework for measuring access to justice that incorporates institutional accessibility, legal protection, empowering victims, outcomes, and support. So I found these indicators like for institutional accessibility, the nature of access to formal and informal justice services, availability of the service, to what extent women are getting legal protection, safety, how the women's voices are represented in the criminal justice process, or they have the right to participation in the decision making. The outcome is that a timely and fair process, is the perpetrator getting sentencing, or there is alternative mechanism, resolution, compensations, are the women getting support from shelter, counseling, healthcare, and emergency. With this lens of conceptual framework, I am guided by the feminist criminological, theoretical, and conceptual framework to understand how gender power issues reflected in the existing service of formal and informal justice providers, and how they shape women's access to justice through a feminist lens. The framework also incorporates intersectionality to understand how multiple identities of women shape their access to the justice service providers, and how the service providers respond to the cases and to victims with intersecting identities. I also applied the vernacularisation of women's human rights in my current thesis to identify and narrate how the concepts and variables of international human rights and women's rights are adapted in the local justice process. And this conceptual framework and theoretical framework helped me to get the key findings in my finding chapter. I'll not talk too much about my methodology because I have already been talked in different in my last two seminars, but I will give you an overview how I have conducted my research. So guided by my theoretical and conceptual framework, I adopt a qualitative research method where I have done my research with two techniques. One is in-depth interview. I talked with the service providers to understand their perspectives and how they think women's access to justice is constructed and how they are helping women to access to justice. The other way was to make observation. I was in the court trials to understand how the court proceedings works, what is the relationship between the victim, offender, court structure, and how the staffs and officials of the court they interact and behave with the victims. I also took part in the settlement process, which is called Shalish in Bangladesh. It's also called alternative dispute resolution as well, and also in the legal aid office and the human rights organizations. So this is my field work in Bangladesh. In Dhaka, I went to specialized courts. I went to the government affiliated legal aid office, several police stations in different zones of the Dhaka city. One stop crisis center, which provides emergency medical support for women and also guide them to the legal assistance process. Victim support center, which is run by Bangladesh Police to provide emergency shelter for women. I visited several human rights organizations who work specifically for women to help and access to justice for domestic violence, gender-based violence cases. This was my travel to the rural areas of Bangladesh in the North Bengal area, which was more than 300 kilometers from the capital city. So I went to more than 9 village courts, talked with chairman, member, leader, village police. I visited the specialized district court, legal aid office, police station, one-stop crisis center, and human rights organizations. But only the village court, they exist in the village areas. These other service providers, they exist in the district area, which is far from the village areas. In PNG, I went to, in comparison to Bangladesh, the fieldwork in PNG was limited. For example, I did my fieldwork in Bangladesh for almost 6 months, while in PNG it was almost 1 month. I went to the district court, village court, safe houses, family and sexual violence unit, family support center, the National Capital District Commission, NGOs. I talked with lawyers and researchers. I'm using pseudonym because due to my research ethics, I'm not disclosing the exact location and place. These are some of the pictures during my fieldwork. These are the special tribunal which deals for women and children cases, violence cases. These all are located in the Dhaka city. This is another specialized court which is located in the district areas. Some victim support services organizations. This is one-stop crisis center. I was talking with one of the staff of the village court. This is in PNG. Okay, so now I'm going to present my key finding based on my observation and interviews in the fieldwork. I have divided the findings into two parts. One, I'll be going to talk about Bangladesh first, and then what I got in PNG. So in Bangladesh, as I told that I visited the court. So I went to the specialized court in Bangladesh who deals with gender-based violence cases. Sometimes they are called tribunal. They are interchangeably called as court as well. They are situated all the district areas. For example, now we have 64 specialized tribunals in Bangladesh who deal with the gender-based violence cases. So how this reform has brought outcome for the specialized courts in Bangladesh, and to what extent they provide access to justice for women. I got that when before women can, women had to go to the police station to file a case and report their violence. Now, with the establishment of this specialized court, they have two pathways to access justice. They can go directly to police to report a case, then police investigates it, and if they find a preliminary evidence, they make a charge sheet, and then it goes to this specialized court. On the other hand, the victim can directly go to this specialized court, and then they can report their cases in the court. Then the court takes the case into consideration, they make a preliminary inquiry, and based on the evidence, the court directs its proceedings. So this is a kind of specialized facility that is not the same for other criminal court cases. I found that the positive and supportive attitudes are evident in the interaction of treatment with victims, because the judges and the staffs of the court, they are specifically trained for the gender-based violence cases, and these courts only deal with gender-based violence cases. For example, domestic violence, sexual violence, women trafficking. So while I was observing in the court, sitting in the courtroom space for more than 2 months, I found that most of the judges were talking with the victim in such a way that doesn't make them feel scared, and judges were more mindful about the sensitivity and confidentiality of the women. For instance, in a few instances, I found that when women were hesitant to talk about their confidential abuse, in front of the large courtroom audience, the judge took them to another room, which is located inside the court, to talk with the victim privately. And even when the victims were age was, for example, children, if the victim was scared to talk in the courtroom, the judges were talking in such a way that doesn't scare the women. In comparison, another opportunity of this court is that the women doesn't need to appoint a lawyer, because the public prosecutor works on behalf of the women, and the defendant can hire a lawyer. But at the same time, if the woman wishes to hire a lawyer, she can do it either free of cost or either the support of a legal aid office. And I found the public prosecutors, their behavior was good, but in a few instances, I found that public prosecutors and lawyers, they were showing gender insensitive attitude. For example, I found that some of the defendant lawyer asking women some shaming questions, and they are blaming the women for their abuse. So, and these kinds of attitudes are more prevalent, what I saw based on my observation in my courtroom. So when women coming from rural areas and women who have a lower education, lower income group, who understands less about the courtroom language, they are facing more such type of questions from the lawyer. Also, the socio-cultural norms of accepting violence, religious practices, dowry practice, this all influence women access to justice. For example, in Bangladeshi socio-cultural context, if someone goes to either report or to police and court, everyone tells not discouraged not to go there and accept the violence. They think this is a minor, domestic violence is a minor issue. They do not need to escalate the problem. It can break their family ties. They can get divorced. What about the children? Another reason is the dowry practice. It's a kind of practice when the women's family had to pay the husband's family amount of cash or any kinds of gift during the marriage. So if the woman is abused after the marriage and she wants to come back, then her own family tells, we have already paid the guy his family a lot of money. So if you come back, then it doesn't make any sense and we have to bear the cost of our living again. So women most often discouraged to go to the court, because if you go to the court, there will be a formal charge, the perpetrator will be arrested, and there will be less room to make a settlement. I also found that protection, despite this improvement, specialized tribunal protection orders are rarely issued. One of the major causes I found that the Domestic Violence Act in 2000, when it was enacted, they have the provision of the protection orders, but the police and the court doesn't practice it most regularly. When I talked with the judges and court staff, they informed me that most women do not want to stay in a different place. They do not want for a protection orders, but at the same time, I understood that the court and the police, they have a lesser capacity to issue the protection orders. We have a lack of victim primary accommodation for the women. And sometimes I also understood that women are hesitant to stay in a different place. They more prefer to stay with their own family. In terms of police, I found that police have a specialized desk, which is called Women and Health Service Desk, which had been established since 2020 only. So it's been 4 years that they are providing these services all over the police stations in Bangladesh. But the difference I found in the specialized units that women can go to the police officers in a separate unit, which is in a different room, where women had to go before to the police officer in charge in a local police station, who are mostly men, and share their abuse with them. It was an uncomfortable situation for them. And most of the police officers, they refuse to take such cases because they think domestic violence is a minor issue, they can settle the issues. But after the implementation, establishment of this specialized desk, now women can share their story and show the mark of their abuse with a female police officer. And this desk is established only to deal such cases. So when this kind of cases come, women, the police officer, who is usually a woman in this specialist desk, she tries to listen it and tries to take immediate actions. However, allegation of unsupportive behavior was also evident when I was visiting some police officers. They, even in the specialized decks, the police officer, they told me like, not all the domestic violence cases are so serious because they can mediate the issues, otherwise the family will be broken. And also they told that women want to withdraw their cases after some time, so it is a waste of our time if we do investigation and the case goes to court, then the victim doesn't cooperate. At the same time, I found that women were discouraged to visit this specialized police stations by the police officers, because they think that now this specialized court has a direct pathway to file their cases. So they want to avoid this complexity in the police stations. They think that they most often tell the women to go to the court and file a case there. And they tell it may take long time, but according to the legal rules, if a victim comes to a police station and in the specialized unit, the police officer is supposed to take the cases, and it is a criminal cases. But I found that this is not the case in all the instances. As the unit is new, it is quite under-resourced. Even it is not independent, despite it is a separate unit, because when a woman wants to file a case, the female officer who is in the charge of the specialized unit of the police, she needs to talk with the officer in charge of the police stations, whether she can file a case or no. So I see this is a procedural complexities. This support is very limited in the rural area because women from rural area, they do not have police station. They have to come in the local town or district to report their cases. And also police have a lack of follow-up for these cases. When I talked with some police officers, they inform me our duties until charge sheet. So we do not investigate, we do not follow up more. It is the court's responsibility to do the further job. In village court, I had an extensive visits to village courts in Bangladesh, and I found that most of the village courts are settlement driven and dispute resolution. They use the dispute resolution mechanisms. I cannot blame them because the village court is mandated to is established with a mandate to restore the relationship among the villagers. And most of the activities of the village court are driven by the socio-cultural norms and religions. For example, when I was taking part in the mediation process of the domestic violence cases in a village, it's called shalish. So in a shalish, normally chairman, the members who also work in the village court, the village elders, victims, family, offender families, and local political figures who are mostly from the ruling political party, and some religious leaders are invited. So in the process, I found that they have less opportunity to reflect the victim voices in the process because most of them are governed by the patriarchal culture, the religious norms, and the power dynamics. I saw some instances where chairman, who is the main person of the shalish, he told the victim, "Why do you not adjust this minor violence?" And some of the leaders and religious leaders, they told that according to our Islamic religious rules, you are supposed to respect your husband, and the husband have a right to control you if you do not obey him. So you should go back to your family, you have children, and you should serve for your husband. And I found the relatives from both families, they do not want to see it as an abuse, rather they want to restore the family ties. So, and I found that the village court, in the village court chalice process, victims' voices were less pronounced. They even didn't have many things to say. So what the outcome I found there, like they have to wait for the whole community, the village elders, the chairman, who decides what would be outcome of the domestic violence. It's not obviously going to favor the victim, rather it's going to favor the offender, even in serious domestic violence cases. And when I asked some of the chairmen why you do not refer these cases to the district police station or court, some of them told me, the chairman told, why should we give a case outside of our village? We cannot solve, if we cannot solve it, it's a shame for us. So we should look after the well-being of our community, and we shouldn't push the case to police and court to escalate the problem. In victim support services, I found that by victim support services, I also told before, I mean that the human rights organization, the legal aid office, the one-stop crisis center, victim support center, I found comparatively they are more gender sensitive because they specifically deal with the gender-based violence cases. Their staffs are more sensitive to dealing with such cases, and they are more training, and they offer a wide range of legal assistance. For example, when I visited human rights organizations, they have the legal assistance cells who have more than hundreds lawyers who provide free support to women if the women wants to navigate to police on court. But they also provide the settlement services, but it is very different from what I found in the village court. I found that the settlement services in the human rights organizations and also in the legal aid offices are more structured. Here, victims' voices are more pronounced. Victims can tell about their abuse, and the coordinator, who is the main of the settlement process, I saw that she is a lawyer. She knows the legal obligation, and it is not then the perpetrator is going to get nothing. For example, in one of the cases, I found that the man abused the women, and the women wants divorce. So when there was a settlement process, the coordinator asked the perpetrator to pay the money which he has taken as a security that is called kabin in Islamic religion, and the guy paid that. In case they refuse to pay it, then they go to the formal police and court system to file a case. But however, their operations are limited in the village areas because these services are more in the district and in the urban areas.
Subrata.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that's nearly 40 minutes now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to go first.
Yeah.
So in in PNG, I found that in the district court, I found their victim voice were present, but I found that there was some part difference. I found a number of instances where a magistrate was talking in a high voice, which I think was comparatively more good in case of Bangladesh. But I found that police prosecutors' behavior was supportive. They are talking with before the court proceedings and also after the court proceedings, and the district court's efficiency more depend on how police record in the case and send to the district court. But it's different from Bangladesh because women cannot file a case directly to the district court in PNG. Similar to Bangladesh, I found that women of rural areas also face obstacles, but in terms of outcome, I found that it's more faster in district court. Maybe it's the particular village district court I visited, but in case of Bangladesh, it takes 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more than 10 years to get an outcome of domestic violence cases. Police have a specialized service in Papua New Guinea, the Family and Sexual Violence Unit, and I found they are more structured than Bangladesh. Maybe in Papua New Guinea, they started in 2009. Even though I went to the key police stations in Bangladesh, I found that these police stations with the FSB unit are more structured. Similar to Bangladesh, they can share their stories of abuse. They assist victims in the receiving medical support and pathway to the court. Also, they assist in the issuance of protection order that I didn't find in Bangladesh. In terms of village court, I found the village courts in PNG that I visited is more improved than of Bangladesh because although they are also settlement driven, but I found the staffs, the magistrates, they are more trained, they have more understanding of the gender-based violence cases, and the concepts of human rights are less vernacularized than that of Bangladesh. For example, when I was talking with the magistrate, I understood their meaning of justice is something different, the meaning of justice in Bangladesh, chairman. Victim support services, I found similar as Bangladesh, they were gender sensitive, they guide victims more effectively, collaborate with other providers. For example, they have the safe houses, which Bangladesh still do not have. And they also have the similar problem of resource constraints, but I found the resource constraints is more in Papua New Guinea than Bangladesh. I'm just going to finish with some similarities in my research side. I found that both countries have specialized police unit. Reforms have brought gender-friendly attitude. Domestic violence is still, but it's shocking that domestic violence is not still dealt as a criminal case in police and court. It is dealt, but in few instances, I found that it is not dealt as a criminal cases. Victim blaming attitude is evident in police and court, more in the village court. Improvement in referral pathway is evident. Protection of victims is still a concern in both countries. Women access to justice is largely shaped by socio-cultural norms, and impacts of reform have been constrained by different problems. The key distinction, I made this in my slide. you can see that FSB and PNG have comparative better capacity, then encourage victims to avoid police. In court, Bangladesh have a better facility because they deal only specialized gender-based violence. In village court, I find that victims can receive protection orders in PNG, which we do not get in the village court of Bangladesh. Meaning of justice is better in Bangladesh, in Papua New Guinea. Victim support services, they are more vibrant in Bangladesh because we have more than hundreds of human rights organizations who specifically deal on GBV cases. But in PNG, I found just a few of them. Safe houses do not exist in Bangladesh. This is the thematic conclusion, how I link my intersectionality and vernacularisation with institutional accessibility, legal protection, empowering women voice, and the outcome and support. So I want to conclude it with some future directions, that some of the key, that domestic violence should be dealt as a criminal case in police and court. In both countries, referral pathways should be worked as a combined network. Empowering women voices should be given a priority, and sociocultural norms should be shaped in such a way that prioritizes justice for women. This is my potential contribution for future research, advance the understanding, assist in practical delivery, contribution in the policy, and it can help to develop a hybrid justice model which prioritize gender sensitivity, intersectionality, human rights, efficiency, and the meaning of access to justice. This was my limitation. I was an outsider in PNG, did an interview in victims, but I heard their voices in the courtroom trials, in the settlement process. Thank you all. I would like to get any feedback and comments from you.
Thank you, Subrata. Sorry that you had to rush at the end there.
I talked 38 minutes, but I spoke late. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Who would like to ask questions?
May I start us off with a quick one?
Yeah.
I believe that you said that having Papua New Guinea as part of the study meant that you gained some insights regarding Bangladesh that you wouldn't have done otherwise if you had just done a study in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could give us an example of one of those ways in which learning about Papua New Guinea helped you with understanding something in Bangladesh.
Yeah, it helped me a lot. For example, I found that in Papua New Guinea, their FSB unit are more resourceful than that I visited in Bangladesh, and they are dealing such cases which can help the Bangladeshi police to establish these services more resourcefully. Then another insights I found, Papua New Guinea have safe houses across the country, which we do not have. Currently, we have just one victim support center in the Dhaka city and two other in the division. So women from rural areas, if they are abused, they do not know where they can go. So they have to live either in their relatives or somewhere else. The third one I found that Papua New Guinea is issuing protection orders, which is very important, which I didn't find in Bangladesh. So I may tell the service providers, or especially the police or court, to incorporate such protection order not only in law but also in practice. So these are some of the learning. Yeah. Thank you.
Subrata, you're welcome to take the questions yourself. You don't need me to.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Congratulations, Subrata, for your excellent and nice presentation. As a Bangladeshi PhD student in ANU, I know how much it is important in our country. So my question is, what challenges did you face in your fieldwork when you interviewing service provider or accessing justice institution in Bangladesh?
Thank you. While I was in Bangladesh, I did my fieldwork for 6 months. So even though I was an insider, but accessibility was a problem. For example, you know that the special tribunals, they are highly restricted, but I have to go for permission to ministry, then I have to go to permission for the judges, and then I found it. for example, in another cases, in gaining access to one-stop crisis center of Dhaka Medical College, it took me more than 3 months to get a permissions. And even in the village areas where most of them, they thought that, oh, I'm a journalist or somewhere, if the village chairman, they talk with me, I may be in trouble. So I have to stay in that rural areas to make them understand this is an academic work, this is not impacting you. Then they would give me information more easily. Yeah, thank you.
There's a couple of questions on the
Okay.
chat, and then somebody has also got their hand raised. The
Okay.
first question, there's lots of complimentary things said, and I won't read that out, but you can read that afterwards. But the
Okay.
question is, what is your key findings from the newly established one-stop crisis centre
In Bangladesh.
And then I think if we scroll down, the second question related to collaboration. How would you strengthen collaboration among service providers in Bangladesh?
Okay. Thank you, Nasib, for your question. So I visited 3 one-stop crisis services in Bangladesh, both in Dhaka and also in the district area. I found that in the Dhaka, the one-stop crisis center is providing better medical support because they have a hospital unit, separate unit, where victims can be admitted. They can get their treatment until they are recovered. They have a legal assistant team with more than 20 lawyers who help them if they want to navigate to court or police. And they have the trained psychologist who can help women from recover from trauma. But in the district areas, which is more into the rural areas, I found that they have only one coordinator who helps women with the medical treatment facilities, but the unit is not separated from the public hospital. And they also provide legal assistance, but they do not have separate lawyers, and they do not have separate police unit that I found in the Dhaka unit. But most optimistic thing is that if you go to hospital for a gender-based violence cases, there is a one-stop crisis center who is providing services for, especially for the victims, women. So I find it is a great impact of the newly reformed unit of one-stop crisis center. Thank you. So I got another questions about the collaboration. So yeah, so the collaboration, I would say, is like a network. If one layer doesn't work, another one doesn't function. For example, when I went to village court, I found that the chairman doesn't want to cooperate with the police and court, and they think they are the powerful one in the village. So why they should go to the urban area to meet with police and court judges? At the same time, when I found that the human rights organization and victim support services, they are doing a good job with the referral pathway, but police is not helping them. So I think it should be a more coordinated effort, and there should be someone who coordinate this. It can be government or anyone else, so that when victim enters in a network, one of the network, she can get service from all of them. Yeah, thank you.
Stephen has his hand.
Okay.
Oh, hello.
Hey, Stephen.
Can you hear me? I can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person. Thank you, Subrata. That was very interesting. And as someone who now works a lot on PNG, I always think there aren't enough comparative studies for PNG. So good on you for doing this. I think, what was missing was, when you explain the similarities and the differences, what explains it? And especially what explains the differences. And that would be useful and maybe a good intellectual contribution. You could link it to the literature on donor influence, on gender norms, on state fragility. There are big civil society differences between Bangladesh and PNG. That's one thing that springs to mind. So just putting your findings in a broader context, trying to explain them, I think would be very useful. And I wonder if you got any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I wish I could tell more about that part because due to time limitation, I couldn't say. But yeah, I found that there is similarities and differences, and there are obvious reasons why the differences and the similarities occurs. And most importantly, I found that the socio-cultural norms based on religion, they impact more not only the women to access services, but also the service providers. For example, in the village areas in both countries, even though their primary objective to restore relationship, but what about when there is serious abuse of domestic violence? Even the patriarchy is existing within the police stations and with the specialized service, because I found instances when women went to the police stations, but the police made them understand this is a familiar issue, you don't need to go further, it can escalate the problems, same as I found in the court. So we just do not need, it's not only in the practices, we need to address those things, those social and patriarchal norms, religious values within the practice as well. And I think it will take a long time considering the socio-cultural context in both Bangladesh and PNG. And the optimistic thing is it's improving. So, and the reform is ongoing. So who knows, like we can get more success in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Time for two more questions. Right.
Thank you, Subrata, for your excellent presentation and excellent work. Actually, my question is, do you have any plan to get back to the policymakers to inform any of your policy recommendation to improve the situation?
Yeah. So based on my research, as I have a plan to go back to Bangladesh, and if I go to have the opportunity to or go in PNG for any conference or meeting them again, I would try to suggest them to improve the situation from what I got in Bangladesh and also PNG, and also from a comparative perspective. For example, if I go to back Bangladesh, as I work with the police headquarters for my research, I can tell them you should help victim more about the protection orders, because victims protection is very important, what I found in PNG. And at the same time, I can also go to the village courts to make them understand, like, you need some collaboration with the formal service providers as well. It's not like just if you are taking their help, you are not the powerful one in the villages. So in such way, when I will have a chance to talk with them and in future research and also in the policy making process, I will definitely tell them the key recommendations of the research and how we can improve it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You did have your hand up.
Yeah, no. Congratulations, Subrata, for this milestone. So Subrata and I share an office. We've been together for what? For a month. Yeah, but congratulations. I'm from PNG, also doing my PhD at DPA, but this is quite a very sensitive topic, not just for the two countries, but for individuals and people who are victims, right? So like for me, when I hear this kind of research, I always want to know, well, does it mean that if more women have more access and pathways to justice, and whether that's referral pathways, or now we have village courts, you have specialized, FSVs, you have one crisis hospital. Does that mean that we should see a decline? And if that is not the case, then where should we be investing more of this? It's valued research, but I also know it's very sensitive even for a woman to disclose the layers of abuse over time to someone, whether you're Bangladeshi or even from your own family. It's very, very hard. So yeah, like my question from any of these kinds of research is, how does this improve the well-being and protection of the victim? Because you did not speak to victims in PNG who are
Yeah.
prevalent.
Yeah.
Victims of DV, GBU, sorcery,
Yeah.
SARS as well. And then you have Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So, and like it would, I know it's hard to get their experience, but they count a lot. I mean, they're the reason why we're doing. So how do you see, like, if we have more access to justice, will that improve or decline the statistics that we see across these two countries, so that we're not in five?
Thank you, Natasha. It's
But anyway, go on.
that's some very good questions, and I think it cannot be said yes or no, but still women get greater access. They can ask for help, but that doesn't mean that there will be less domestic violence. It also depends how the service providers are providing justice in terms of their availability, empowering their voice, legal assistance, and outcome. For example, in Bangladesh now we have the specialized courts, but what is the outcome? We found that when I was talking with the judges and going through the statistics, 99% cases of domestic violence ends without any sentencing to perpetrator. So if this is the case, then it will not going to increase. And what about the rural women? They doesn't even know the police have a specialized unit, and they have a specialized code, and all the service providers, the informal service, the victim support services, they are situated in the urban areas. So it's more of and also about the bigger picture that I told, like even though the service providers act very good, we can say that the rate of domestic violence will decline, because it's up the mindset of all of us, of the society, how we value women, how we educate our children, how the institutions frames gender. So even the offender gets perpetrator gets sentencing, we need to change the whole society, how we see women, women as a gender bias, or we can make the violence or patriarchy is there. So we need some time to change the whole thing. Judy, again.
I'll just give an hour lecture. I'm very passionate about that. But just one comment around why Subrata didn't interview. From it going through an ethics process, it is extremely difficult to get the okay to interview victims. It's very hard to get the balance right, I think, because it is critical to get the perspective of victims that you do not want to cause further harm. And certainly research I've done on PNG, as you know, has been very carefully done with family PNG as a support service. So there's ways of doing it, which is not easy for a PhD student to do. But in terms of that question about does it make a difference, I mean, you have to look at it both from the individual level and also the societal level, I think. And certainly the research we did in Papua New Guinea looking at family protection orders, we interviewed more than 100, mostly women. There were a few men who applied for family protection orders, and we followed them up sequentially over time to see whether they've actually were experiencing an end or a reduction in violence. So the upshot of that research was to show for those applicants for a protection order that over time they were safer. And that was a really important finding. When we look more at a societal level, you use a number of indicators, which could be matters reported to the police, and you can do surveys to see at a population level whether there's changes in reported experiences of domestic violence and changes in attitudes. In places like, say, Bangladesh and Papua New Guinea, it's difficult because A, the administrative data, the policing data, may not be available and reliable, but you can't track over time. There have been a number of surveys in both countries, there's Subrata mentioned, but the challenge, as we know, with any reform in the criminal justice area is usually there's an increase in the reporting levels, and you'll find that in the police data, And in surveys, you will also find a greater willingness to call something domestic violence. And so you will see what seems like an increase in that violence. However, if you stick with it over time, and this is the advantage of being my age, you look at change over the longer term, which I've been doing here in Australia now for 30 years, and you will see actual changes in the nature of the violence. So the reforms that were introduced in the 1980s here in Australia have produced, I think we can confidently say, a change in the level and nature of domestic violence. That's not to say it isn't still happening, and it isn't, I wouldn't call it widespread, but it's certainly still happening, but it is not serious the levels of seriousness have diminished over time. Absolutely. And that is due to the kinds of reforms that Subrata has outlined for the two countries that we're talking about. So often people say, oh, well, what's the point? Is, it's still rife, domestic violence. But sometimes we have to look at take the wrong view, right? And
So we could go back and do this if we wanted.
Subrata's going to have to do this for every couple of years, right? To document those changes.
Yeah.
But something that's very important is the symbolic value of those reforms. That is communicating a very key message around domestic violence. So in Papua New Guinea, having the Family Protection Act makes it very clear. It was before that act. Domestic violence was a crime. You could be charged with assault or whatever, right? But that Family Protection Act makes it very clear that domestic violence, and it's named as domestic violence, is a crime. And there's lots of powerful evidence from around the world that having that communicated through law makes a difference. I feel like I am about to embark on an hour-long lecture, and I was not. Subrata, do you want to say anything more in conclusion?
Just thank you everyone for coming today and encouraging me. And I hope I'll be able to finish the journey with all of your support. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.